Hello BookTube and welcome to the Literary Buffet. My name is Louis and today we're doing the 20 Bookish Questions tag. This tag was recently relaunched by Brock from the Active Mind. I'll link below to his channel and his tag, and it's been done by other people, so I'll tag a few or link a few below. I'm here with my little companion Lucky. And so let's start right now and get into it. The first question is somewhat linked a bit more to genre fiction, and it's how many books is too many books in a series? So I rarely read book series nowadays. For me, I would say the maximum is 3. Anything beyond 3 is just becoming too much. I lose interest. The story just becomes convoluted. So my preference is actually just 1 volume. So if it must, then 3. Anything beyond is not for me anymore. The next question, how do you feel about cliffhangers? So I think this is pretty much linked to the first question. So normally you would need a cliffhanger, if you have a series so that people continue reading the next books in the series. I think cliffhangers within a story, like to end a chapter, are absolutely fine. I think they're just a normal tool of the writing craft, let's say. So I don't feel too strongly about them. I quite dislike if a book ends on a cliffhanger and a lot of things are unresolved and there's no further book in the series, or the series has ended or hasn't been finished or something like that. So that's why I'm probably a bit less euphoric about cliffhangers than some other people that have done this tag. The next one, hardcovers or paperbacks. In general, I prefer paperbacks, but if I see that the price is quite similar for a paperback or hardcover, I'll probably go for the hardcover just because I think they're more durable. They can, last longer, last decades even. Also, often like a hardcover might have a slightly nicer finish to it. I have an example here. This is a German translation of Marco Polo's travels to China, Il Milione. And it's just a very pretty hardcover. Just has like a map with the locations as used by Marco Polo, as far as I can see. Yeah, and it has like inside. It's printed in 2 colors. So there's some purple color in addition to black, and it has like picture inserts. So here you can see actually also the purple footnotes. So that's why I don't mind paying a bit more for a hardcover if it's good quality. Then the next question is, just give me a second. My favorite book. It's difficult to say my favorite book because I like a lot of books. I think a lot of you will be the same. So it's difficult to pick a favorite. I have one here which is quite humongous. So this is Dream of Red Mansions, also translated as The Dream of the Red Chamber, and also translated as The Story of the Stone. So there's various translations of this Chinese classic. Is probably the most famous, the most beloved, the most studied classic of Chinese literature. As you can see, it's quite long, but all the 4 main classics of Chinese literature are more or less the same length. And it's really an epic that covers everything. It's like the decline of a family. It's a romance with star-crossed lovers. It's philosophical. There's supernatural elements to it. There's beautiful descriptions. There's poetry competitions. There's, yeah, you just go. Yeah, you can go. Huh? You don't know? Fine. So it's just a world unto itself. I really recommend it. It's a fantastic book. Then the next one was, I think, who's your favorite author? Which is actually even harder to pick, because what does favorite author really mean? I mean, if it's like an author that I would read everything from or love everything from, I think there's very few of those. And I also think that it changes with your reading life, with age. I used to love Terry Pratchett when I was younger. I read almost all the novels of Terry Pratchett. Nowadays, I'm not sure. I mean, I would probably still enjoy them, but they draw me less. I also have just a few authors where I like quite a lot of things, but not everything. So what I decided to do is just to show you favorite authors in various languages that I read, because in the end, I think for me nowadays, favorite means to a certain extent an author that can write really beautifully in a certain language, and so I have a few of those. So take it for what you will. For instance, for Portuguese language, I really like the prose of Fernando Pessoa. I think he's quite famous in English for the Book of Disquiet, but in Portugal, he was even more famous as a poet. He's probably the best poet in the Portuguese language, and he wrote like different styles of poems. He had like different, he called it heteronyms, so different personas that he basically infiltrated to write his poems, and they write in different styles. They have backstories that he made up. So really fascinating guy. So for Portuguese, Fernando Pessoa. For English, I chose Melville and Moby Dick. I really love the prose in Moby Dick. Yeah, come, Lucky. Yeah. In French, one that's I think one author that's not talked about enough, in my opinion, is Marguerite Yourcenar. Her most famous book is Memoirs of Hadrian, and it's fantastic. I just love her prose. I think people always praise, for instance, Proust and some of the 19th century French writers. But for me, out of the various French authors I've read, the best author, the best writer in the French language so far that I've encountered is Marguerite Yourcenar. And last but not least, in German, in the German language, for me, the best writer, the writer with the best prose is Thomas Mann. This is The Magic Mountain. It's just a fantastic read. His style is just magnificent. Then, what was the next question? What's the ideal book length? So, there's no ideal book length. I mean, I think a book has to perform like with the length that the author has given it. I quite like long books. I think long books, as you've seen with the Dream of the Red Chamber, they really create a world that you can immerse yourself into. So the one I picked here just to show you, because it does have the ideal length, is My Name is Red by Orhan Pamuk, Turkish writer. It's a wonderful book. It's one of the best historical novels I've read. I might do a video on it someday. And the length in this English translation is, if we take away the back notes, 666 pages. So I would say, what's the perfect book length? 666 pages. Then, what's the next question? Most recent book that I just couldn't finish. And that's a book by José Saramago, the Portuguese author that won the Nobel Prize 2 decades or 3 decades ago. I usually quite like his novels, and I also usually quite like his style. He writes very long sentences in Portuguese, which can become a bit convoluted, but I liked it in some other of his novels. This one here, it really didn't gel with me. So this is the history of the Siege of Lisbon, and yeah, it didn't. I didn't vibe with it. So I'm almost done. I might finish it at some point because it's really not long to go, but I just feel like reading other stuff currently. What's the book I'm currently reading? So the book I'm currently reading is Mason and Dixon by Thomas Pynchon, and that's because I just finished another Pynchon book, that will come in this list a bit later, and I just felt kind of like taken back into Pynchon's crazy world, and then his prose, which is also very beautiful in English. And so I decided to finally give Mason and Dixon a go. This is a very old edition here, but like a very colorful one. And yeah, so far I'm still at the start, but 50 pages in more or less, and I'm liking it. So the next question, the last book I've recommended to someone. So I will exempt any books I've recommended in videos here. So a book that I've recommended to someone in person is The Deluge by Adam Tooze. So it's a nonfiction book, history. It looks at the economic history of the end of the First World War. So kind of like starting in 1916 with the entry of the Americans into the First World War. And it goes roughly until the end of the 1920s, until the Great Depression. And it focuses on the economic history of the main Western countries, so America, Britain, France, and Germany, Weimar Germany. And to a certain extent, it tries to answer the question why Weimar Germany ended up falling into the hands of the Nazis. It's a very different take. It's an economist's take on basically the whole period between the end of the First World War, the various treaties, the Versailles Treaty, and what it meant for the Weimar Republic. Little known facts as well, and in particular how the US refused to forgive the debt that Britain and France had incurred during the First World War, which basically forced them to impose very harsh conditions on Germany, which then decided at some point during the Weimar Republic that it was never going to fulfill those reparations anyway, so it might as well gamble and like just take even more debt from America, and just basically tying all of these nations together in a web that in the end could only lead to disaster. So it's a fascinating book. If you like history, if you like the First World War, the Second World War, the fall of the Weimar Republic, it's definitely recommend. Then the newest book I've read in terms of publication date. So that's the one I have done a video on, and I'll link it below. It's Shadow Ticket from Thomas Pynchon. I quite liked it. I know some people dislike it, but for me, I really enjoyed it. And as I mentioned, it made me read another Pynchon book. It was published on the 7th of October 2025, so it's definitely the most recent in terms of publication date. Then, what is the oldest book that I've read in terms of publication date? And I mean, that's a little bit hard to judge because some of these books that were written in antiquity, we don't even really know when they were written. Like Homer, we don't really know when did Homer live. Was there even a Homer? Or was this just like a collection of bards and it was at some point written down? What about the Bible? What about any other religious texts from that era? I've shared in another video that I'll also link below a book on with poetry by Enheduanna, a high priestess from Mesopotamia, the oldest author we know the name of. But here I have another one from another culture that I wanted to share with you. Also, definitely recommend. I think it's kind of like a must-read if you are interested in Indian literature, Indian culture, and that's the Mahabharata. This is an abridged version. The actual Mahabharata is even longer than the Dream of the Red Chamber that I showed you. And this is basically a mix of the Iliad, the Bible, all kinds of other myths that you can think of thrown in as well. It's also a world onto its own, but it's in addition to that a work of theology, and in addition to that a work of philosophy, and in addition to that set of stories and mythologies that are all weaved into this tapestry of a book. This abridged version is fortunately, rather readable. I'm not sure I would, at this stage, read the whole Mahabharata just because it's so long. I think it's like 12 books in total. But to dip your toes into Indian culture, I think it's a must-read just because so much Indian Indian literature is referencing the Mahabharata, or people from the Mahabharata, or heroes, stories, etc. It has just had such an influence on Indian culture as maybe just like the Bible in Western culture. So it's probably a must read if you're interested in India. So then the next question, plays or short stories? Is kind of like a tricky one because I'm not a big reader of either. If I had to choose, well, I mean, the play is like something that you can read quite easily in an afternoon or so. So if I'm between books, I might sometimes just pick a play and read that. But the other thing is like short stories. I think they are really hard to do. I don't know why people are taught to, or authors, or young authors are taught that they should start with short stories. I think actually the short story form is a harder form than the novel. A lot of the short stories you come across are just like boring. I mean, there could be scenes in a longer novel, but in themselves they do nothing. So if I go for short stories, I usually prefer authors that are specialized in short stories and haven't written novels or stuff like that. So just one here that I can recommend. It's the Japanese author Akutagawa. He wrote a few quite famous short stories, like Rashomon, who was made into a movie. There's like there's another. It's Rashomon mixed with another story that has been made into the movie Rashomon. Another famous one is the Hell Screen. So he has quite a few very moving, very interesting short stories. Then buying or borrowing books? Buying. Next question. Books you dislike that everyone else seems to love? The Old Man and the Sea. I really didn't like it. I know it's like a beloved kind of canonical work. It's basically associated with Hemingway himself nowadays. I mean, it's tiny, but for it being tiny, I still found it too long. I think he could have written this story as a short story, and I actually prefer some of his short stories. And I just found the character of, I think Santiago is his name, just obnoxious, unrealistic. I don't think that's how a fisherman would actually behave. I don't think it's how a fisherman would talk. I think he just took his prose style of like being very sparse and using very few words to an extreme where it just became, I don't know, fake. So I really didn't like it. I know lots of people love it. He won the Nobel Prize for it. For me, no. I like other Hemingway stuff, but not this. Then bookmarks or dog ears. So usually bookmarks, or actually always bookmarks. I don't like dog ears. I did it when I was young, but nowadays bookmarks. I like these ones here. They come with my coffee. They're kind of like attached to the coffee bag, so I just reuse them as bookmarks. Then the next question, a book you could always reread. It's kind of like a tricky question because I don't often reread books just because there's so many new things to read. And some of the books that I like are really long, so rereading it is also a huge time commitment. But I think one that's a bit shorter, just because it's a short story collection, and that I really love, and I could just like, open it and read some of the stories again and again and again. And that's Ficciones from Jorge Luis Borges. That's my second short story guy here. I really love Borges, especially this collection here, the Ficciones collection, and especially the very famous ones. Let me just find the titles. If this had an index, it would be easier. So the one Tlön Ukbar Orbis Tertius, I love that one. I love the Library of Babel and the Garden of Forking Paths. These are just a few of those that I just completely adore. Then, can you read while hearing music? Yes. I actually do that quite often, especially when I commute, because then I don't hear whatever is happening in the train or the bus. And then the next question, one POV or multiple POVs? I actually quite like multiple POVs. I think I don't even see why there's like a choice, because I think it really depends on the story you want to tell. It might be more of a question again for genre fiction, where it's more of a question. I think I read a bit more literary fiction nowadays, and you have all kinds of things there. I just took an example of actually a book where I found multiple POVs being really well done, and that's Damon Galgut, The Promise. Yeah, exactly. Damon Galgut is a South African author, and not only are there four or five main protagonists here, I think it's four. It's been some time since I read it, but even within these four chapters where he focuses on that one POV, he's still within the chapter. He jumps POVs to random people that they encounter, and I found it quite well done. I love this. You kind of like switch POVs all the time. I think this question, one POV versus multiple POVs, is sometimes taken as meaning like, should you tell, if you tell, for instance, Game of Thrones or A Song of Ice and Fire, where you have chapters that are written in one POV and then you switch to another POV in another chapter because it's the action that takes place somewhere else, and then you switch to a third person in a third location. It can work, but I can also see why people might dislike it. When I was reading I read the first three books of A Song of Ice and Fire, and then I gave up. As I was saying in the first question, I think 3 is kind of like the maximum for a story. And I did sometimes just get annoyed when you would have a cliffhanger, as in question 2, of whatever, Daenerys doing something, and then you would have to jump to Arya, which was just like lost in the woods or whatever, and we're like, oh, really? I want to stay with Daenerys here. So that's why I can understand why this question is on this list. So I think it can be well done, and I think it's often well done actually in literary fiction. In genre fiction, I can understand that sometimes it might not be the best approach, especially if you force the reader to leave a POV, where they were just like in the midst of the action and they want to continue with that POV. I think that's less of an issue with literary fiction, where you're anyway a bit more focused on characters and on other things than, I don't know, like a battle sequence or whatever. The next question, do you read a book in one sitting or over multiple days? Multiple days, because most of the books I read are quite long, or at least too long to read in one sitting. A play I would read in one sitting, or a short story, obviously, but that's basically it. And then the last question is to tag people, so I will tag some people under this video. And anyone who sees it and wants to do a video on the 20 bookish questions, please feel free to do so. So that's it for me today. Thanks for listening, and goodbye, BookTube.